Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure for the World Tennis Conference and also by GPTCA and Segal Institute to have with us one great coach like Sandy Mittleman. Sandy, hello.
Hello, Fernando. Well, I appreciate you having me a part of this amazing conference, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you and be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. To have a small review about the successful career of Sandy, we can say that he has coached many players from 30 different countries and used nationals and ITF, ATP, WTA tournaments. Also, he has coached some juniors and players who has played Grand Slams and WTA tournaments of the tour. And also he did train and coach three players who won in the national tournaments under 18 in the United States, and many, many other things like lecture on different congresses and national and international congresses, and helping to develop more tennis around the world. Thank you, Sandy, to be with us. And you're gonna present about player assessment, which is a very important topic.
Yeah, Fernando, well, thank you for the very nice introduction. I don't get those every day, so very much appreciate it. Yes, the topic to present today for everybody in the conference, and I hope that everybody finds it interesting, is the topic of player assessment and what I call the new generation will to skill. So on this slide, Fernando, as you can, and everybody that watches, as you can see, I referenced 7 keys, will to skill. I've believed for many years through experience that when you assess players, I believe that you should start from the top down, not the bottom up. And along the lines of seeing many players around the world at many levels, when I watch players and I've assessed them, the first thing I typically gravitate towards is I pay attention to their focus, their mentality, their passion. Those need to be evident quickly as you can see the future. So for example, just a quick example, when you see a player who's 12 years old, I don't see them as a 12-year-old. I try to imagine them at 18 or 19 as an adult, as a fully built adult. And what does that look like? And so when I look at the mental, the focus, and the passion, those are 3 extremely important attributes or components to what type of success a player, a boy or a girl, may potentially have in the future. And as you look at on this presentation, as you look on this slide, the red arrows pointing down, the first thing on the left is 30 to 30, and it's a number or sort of a kind of a, I'm not sure if it's a phrase, but it's I guess a term I came up with, where I realized many years ago that when I was doing player assessments, I realized quickly that every time I watched any player at any level, practicing or tournament, I always was very interested and believed in what I saw them doing for the first 30 seconds to 5 minutes after something bad happened, after an error, after something bothered them, because I realized that if you correlate that with what you see at the top of the game, you realize that all the best players in the world, all the greats of the game, yes, they get frustrated, those things, but they typically can manage to gain the mental and emotional control within the first 30 seconds to roughly 5 minutes, which, or give or take. So I call it 30 to 300 because 300 is 60 times 5. And I think it's a very important thing for coaches around the world to pay attention to, whether you're looking at a player just on a casual day of practice, tournament, pre-tournament, post-tournament, because as we all know as coaches, a lot of times matches are won and lost with how much they can control their mind and their emotions, not about the skill per se. So that's where 30 to 300 comes in. As we move over in the slide, I talk about three things, or I share three things. The legs, everybody knows the value of the legs in an athlete. And I fully believe that through all my years of assessing players at every level from around the world, that I go from their mind to their heart to their legs. And when you see their legs working in a way where you don't have to encourage them to use them, they have the ability and the feel to adjust to all the balls, the spins, the speeds, maybe even the environment, a lot of wind, various things, the court surface. Then I think those are very important keys to pay. One of the very important keys to pay attention to. So the legs are extremely important. And when we move over and we talk about intensity, it's not a secret. All coaches know that intensity is incredibly important asset and a key to success. But what I feel like is often underrated and not paid attention to enough is instantly paying attention to it, instantly looking for it. That first minute when you're watching a player, if a parent asks you to assess somebody, paying attention to their intensity. Because if they don't have intensity and you can't see them maintaining it for long rallies, rally after rally, long periods of time and under stress, then it becomes very challenging to see a broad future. And the last on the right, the last one of the 7 keys, court sense. I really watch for court sense. And court sense to me, and I'm sure all the coaches that I'm actually blessed to be a part of in this conference, all these great coaches worldwide, I'm sure that in their own way, they would agree that when they look at a player and they assess player at all levels, you have to look at court sense. You have to look at a player like feeling where they are on the court, like innately, like they just know where they are and they understand how to get back to where they need to be. And you don't feel like there's work to do for them to figure out the court. It's almost like they have a sense of where they are and where they need to be and how they need to get there. So for me, when I do player assessments, it doesn't matter if it's a 8-year-old boy or girl, or it's a 14-year-old looking to play ITF tournaments, or it's maybe a player that's trying to transition to the pro level. Anybody, when I assess a player, these are the 7 keys that I initially focus on. So in this slide, I talk about growth characteristics, and intensity is, of course, the first point of reference, and it comes from the initial slide. But the reason for that is because intensity, I think, is highly underrated and undervalued as something that's really important to assess with a player, because as all coaches know, when you look at competitive players, high performance players, pretty much almost every young athlete can have intensity for a game, can have intensity for 2 games. But I think the real question is, when you're assessing a player, is, are they intense from the first ball to the last? Are they intense when they're warming up? Are they intense when they are preparing for a practice? How do they manage the intensity? Does their intensity drift or does it waver? I think it's a very important component. I think it's one of the major growth characteristics, because as players develop, their intensity is challenged, because the level gets better, the level gets stronger, the expectations get higher, and they're playing more. So I think that being able to manage and maintain intensity is incredibly important. So that's the first growth characteristic. Next is athleticism. And athleticism is what it is. Everybody knows how important it is to be a great athlete if you want to be a great player someday. I don't know if all the other coaches would agree, but from my point of view, in my experience level, there aren't any not great athletes at the top of the sport. So athleticism is definitely an important growth characteristic. Court management, I think, is extremely important. A player understanding how to manage the space and the time on a court. So regardless of their opponent, regardless of the circumstance, the score, to be able to have court management, to understand what's in front of them and how to navigate that. Because the better the player is, the more likely they are to be able to make a player uncomfortable. And last point on this slide under growth characteristics is to improvise. And I've been a long since believer, 30 years coaching, that it's a very undervalued asset a young player can have, or any player can have, is their ability to improvise. Because there's the standard shots, that everybody trains for and everybody can repeat over and over. But oftentimes when you watch the best of the best play, even the best young kids, they often win points or steal points. Like I like to use, it's a phrase a friend of mine uses, steal points, where the only reason why they won a point is because they were in a position they probably didn't want to be in, and they were able to improvise and do something that's sort of out of the standard and do it comfortably and successfully. So I think that a big part of growth is the ability to improvise.
Sorry.
No problem. These points I feel like are very interesting, and I feel like they're super broad topics, and I feel like they could probably take an entire presentation. But to simplify all of them, they're things that I innately pay attention to when I assess players. They're, you hear it talked about tennis IQ, like just a boy or a girl, a child's, I don't know, understanding of the game. They just, when you see them practice, or you see them work, or you see them, play points or play sets or matches, you can see they have an understanding of the actual game of tennis. You can see they know what's going on. You can see they, in some ways, can read the play. They can read what's happening, what their opponent's doing to try to make them uncomfortable. And they just have an understanding of situations where, so oftentimes players are very good, but they don't have a very broad tennis IQ. So when I look at players, I see, okay, what kind of tennis IQ do they have? Are they really aware of what's happening? And do they seem to be, it's almost like they seem to be a professional player in a kid's body. It's kind of how I look at it. They look at that, they feel the game, they understand what's happening. So tennis IQ, I think, is very important. It goes without saying that technique is obviously important. I think having the solid foundation and making sure you're working with somebody who can help develop those things, all the shots, I think is incredibly important. And one of the things I always look at with players when I assess them, and with the technical side, is that I always keep in mind that there aren't any two players that have the same technique. There just aren't. Even when you look at the Bryan brothers, they're identical twins and they have slightly different technique, right? So I'm a big believer that if you look at the top of the sport down, everybody, no matter how great they are and how much they've won, they all have a different way of doing the exact same thing. Hitting a forehand, hitting a backhand, the serve. So I think the key with technique when you assess a player is try to decide what is comfortable for that particular player, that particular boy or girl. Try to decide what's comfortable for them. They may be doing something that looks a little bit out of the ordinary, but they do it efficiently and it works for them and it works really well. And then obviously to tweak it and develop it. But I don't always feel like technique is, I think sometimes technique is not overvalued in terms of importance when assessing a player, but I think that everybody's going to have their own way of doing the same thing. So I don't think always the technical side is to be maybe overvalued. I think that you look at a player and you say, okay, they know how to hit all the shots, but maybe we need to, refine a couple of things. But generally speaking, they've got pretty good technique and we can just refine it. When it comes to the next point on the slide, hand talent, this is a pretty interesting topic. I watch the players' hands because you can see when they have feel and they kind of just know what they're doing with the racket in their hand, with their hands. They can change grips. They can play all types of spins. It doesn't matter where the ball is or what it's doing. They can just somehow adjust and adapt because they have the hand talent to do it. They feel it. And whether it's playing drop shots or spins or variations of spins, I often pay attention to the hand talent, because I think that then you can somehow develop and manage a game and see things broader in the future, because they can do these things with the hands that a lot of people, a lot of kids can't, or a lot of players can't do. So I think hand talent is very interesting and important to look at when you assess players. On the opposite side of the slide, you have three very important aspects of assessing a player and growth characteristics. You have weapons. Do they have weapons? Can they hurt their opponent with a backhand, with a forehand, with a serve, by coming into net, with volleys, with return of serve, all the different aspects of the game? But can they do something with any of those shots where their opponent needs to be worried? So when they play shots, do you look at them and say, wow, they can really have a great backhand down the line that can be a weapon, and that can really be developed into something very strong and impactful on their competitive results. So I pay attention to whether players have weapons, and if they have two or three, that's obviously fantastic. Now, the phases and feel, this is something where I look at the phases of play: defense, neutral, offense, transition, attack. I look at many phases of play, and how do the players move in and out of those phases? Does it look like they have to think about it? Does it look like they have to work at it? Their reaction time is a bit slow. Or when you're looking at them, do they just sort of naturally assess and react to what's happening with the ball and move in and out of the phases of play? And the feel, so it's phases and feel. The feel is just, I guess in combination with phases, is they just feel that a ball is short, or they feel that they're being pushed back, or they feel that the ball is being played faster, or the ball has got more spin and jumping off the court, or it's staying lower and shorter, or they're being moved out wide. And they feel the need and the way to adjust or change or adapt or improvise. So phases and feel, I think, is another very important growth characteristic. And lastly, on the slide, adversity management. All the coaches in this conference who I'm fortunate to be beside, they understand the value of adversity management. Every player that they've worked with that's been successful, and all the players that I've worked with and had the privilege of working with that have been successful, have adversity management. So when I look at a player, I just want to see them in the toughest circumstance and see what they do. Can they manage it? Can they handle it? Or do they, basically, do they fold? But if they can handle adversity, then you feel like, oh, wow, this player's got a great opportunity to really grow and succeed and develop. So adversity management. So on this slide, you'll see that I reference ages 8 to 10. And the boy I happen to be pictured with is Peter Brunslick. I met him when he was just 8. He's now 14. He's a Czech player from the Czech Republic. And he's in the picture with me because he basically encompassed everything that I think is important or I value in player assessment. He has everything. And one of the things I reference on the slide you'll see is the eyes tell a story. So with him in particular, I knew right away when I saw him at 8 years old, I knew instantly with his eyes when he was practicing that he wanted to be a great player. He loved this sport, and he was just so happy to be on the court, and he was intense about it. So the eyes tell a story, and I think that's very important. So when I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation that when I first look at a player, the first thing I pay attention to is from the top down, I watch their eyes, because I think the eyes can say a lot. The other part, the other component on the slide is the passion. So I'm a big believer in seeing passion. I don't think there's anything that can take the place of passion. I think that when kids have the passion for the game, then you look at all the other components, the legs, the adversity management, the technical side, all those things. And I think what you find is when you see passion in a young player, I think that you've got many opportunities to do something with them and really develop them and reach for big goals. So I think the eyes tell a big story, and I think the passion is incredibly important to pay attention to. So still in the same age category, and I'm sitting here with Peter as well, focus. Just the player's ability to stay present in the moment, tune things out, being in the moment from the beginning to the end of practice, and whether it's practice or training blocks or obviously matches, match to match. I think it's a very undervalued characteristic and asset that when you have in young players, or you're assessing any players, their ability to focus, because as we all know, focusing is not easy for long periods of time. But when somebody has that ability to focus, stay tuned in, block things out, then regardless of all the other things that are going on, I think they have the opportunity to manage all the other things like the skill, situations, matchups, and many things. And I think that they can work their way through it. But focus is incredibly important. And of course, the mental side. Just the ability to engage in their surroundings, tune any distractions out, and just, basically be open to the challenge of every situation, the mental side. There's no better time to talk about that than honestly now. And everybody who's living in the world of tennis, and obviously COVID, in the tournament world in particular, everybody's been learning a lesson by watching all these tournaments take place in this time, because what a lot of players and coaches of these players are talking about is the mental challenge of being in the uncertainty of every day. So I think that when you look and assess players, I think that paying attention to the mental side is incredibly important and critical.
Like I said before, more forehands from the backhand side. Too much backhand from the middle, okay? Be more aggressive to the line, okay? You need to, and you can obviously translate this, okay? You need to dictate, control, okay? Control the court. When you see your opponent can't hurt you.
Thanks for that. Actually, a quick note about that video. Working with Peter was quite fascinating, and talk about the mental side and the focus. When I met Peter, he didn't speak a word of English, nothing. And of course, for everybody out there, I don't speak any language other than English fluently, but been working with a lot of kids from around the world, as Fernando graciously said. And one of the challenges working with Peter is just the ability to communicate with him was incredibly important. How do I keep his focus? How do I keep his mental side in the right place? Because he could understand most of me, but he couldn't respond to me, and I couldn't obviously connect and check. So the way we communicated was actually quite fascinating. And it was also a great learning experience, because I understood quickly he has a huge passion for the game, because anybody who doesn't understand English, that's willing to work with an English speaking only coach when they're that young and really spend time with you and try to understand it and have your parents translate it, that says a lot about their mentality. So anyways, I wanted to share that with you. So as we move forward to this slide, and it says ages 11 to 13, I start referencing the 30 to 300 that I mentioned in the beginning, because I think it's incredibly important. And also, this is also the age where I kind of feel like a lot of kids are shifting a little bit. They're starting to compete more. They're starting to maybe prepare for that sort of next level maybe towards the ITF level or the bigger national level or wherever they are in the world, whatever level that might be, but they're definitely starting to be encouraged by coaches to compete more. And the reason why I put this now is because I believe it's critical to player success. I mean, if you look at if you look at the players like Rafa and Roger, Novak and Serena, and all the great players that everybody is obviously familiar with, their ability after errors or after something bad happens, because it does to everybody every day. There's nobody who doesn't miss, not even those guys. Those guys miss every day. When they're in the heat of the battle and they're in the third set and they're trying to figure it out, hit that next shot, when they miss something, I always give the example, I use the example, and I don't know why it's not specific to this player, but just in general, I always say, listen, Roger Federer's forehand has made him a lot of money in his career, but he's also missed a lot of them. And so I always tell parents and kids, what do you see when you see Roger shank a forehand into the stadium, or he mishits a forehand, or he plays a poor one? You don't see him dwell on it for the next 30 seconds to 5 minutes. The next time a ball comes to his forehand, he's almost 99.9% of the time guaranteed that he's going to hit a good shot. It's maybe not the best shot, but it's a good shot. So he's right back to belief and security and clarity. And so I think that that's a very important learning characteristic or skill that kids need to have. So Peter's a great example, and he's why he's in this picture with me, is that I've told his parents, I've told coaches that have worked with him in the Czech Republic that see the same thing I see in him. Look, he may lose it mentally a little bit. He has on court and matches, because I've seen it many times, but you give him time and he gets it back. And don't mistake his passion, right? His passion for loss of control. He just believes in the shot so greatly that when he misses it, he gets upset. But as long as he gets that control back mentally and emotionally in a certain amount of time, then I know he's right back and ready to go. So I think that 30 to 300 is really important. And right when I watch a player, honestly, whether they're practicing, it could be like a standard practice. Somebody could practice with anybody with a coach, and they could be hitting down the middle. And I still think in my mind the same way. Nothing changes. They miss right away, 30 seconds. What happens? Coach feeds the ball. Are they locked in and ready to go? Or are they like complaining about the wind, the sun, the feed, whatever's going on, or are they ready to go? So I think that that's very important. So in these particular videos in this slide, I reference phases and feel. And one of the reasons why, and Peter's again the same player. The top slide is in Boca in Florida, preparing for the Eddie Herr for a week, and the bottom one is a different year in Palm Beach, and we were on the clay, and he was getting ready for the Orange Bowl. So in terms of phases and feel, the reason why I put these two videos, short videos, is because those are the things that we were talking about and we were working on. The top video basically is just showing a very basic drill that anybody in the world would do with any particular student of theirs or player of theirs. It's a cross-court drill, but the focus is on phase and feel. So basically with Peter that day, I was just asking him to focus on when he felt like the moment was right and he could feel it. I wanted him to change direction of the ball. So didn't always work out well, but he was just trying to work through it. So we talked about the phase. He was close to the baseline, so he was in a neutral to offensive position, and he was feeling the shot good. He was feeling the moment right, so he would go down the line. So I told Peter with the phases and feel, don't worry about the result of the shot. Focus on what you're doing to accomplish it and why. And that was it. And on the bottom slide, you'll notice that I'm showing him something technically. And so all we were doing was a very simple exercise. I was tossing him balls on his backhand side and just asking him to work on feeling the movement in the court and transitioning through the short, like the mid-court ball, hitting a backhand on line, coming in for a very simple volley, but phases and feel, to feel everything and just move from one part of the sort of the rally, the ball, to the next. So phases and feel, I feel like, are very important. And these two slides are very simple ways of demonstrating it.
Elbows come out when your right side doesn't come. If you do this with your hand, then your right side comes around. Okay? Mini tennis doesn't mean how hard do I hit the ball. It's about racket control, footwork, slow movement.
So I think on this slide, if I'm correct, sorry about that, Fernando. This is also phases and feel, and I apologize for the faded out ages up there. We're still at 11 to 13. And these two videos, again, I put them in the same category because in this particular video on the left, Peter was basically, it was just a very light day. And the reason why I put it here is because, you know, I had him just hitting with another kid in a group and just sort of relaxed. And one of the things that we talked about in the short court was just feeling the ball. That was it, nothing else. He was just feeling the ball. It's very simple, very relaxed. There was nothing intense about it, kind of warming up. But we talked about where he was in the court and what I wanted him to feel at that moment. It wasn't about hitting the ball perfectly. It was just about understanding where he was, like, within the situation. And so that's the reason for that slide. So as we move along to, we're in ages 14 to 16 now, and you can see that the two reference points are legs and athleticism. And just a quick overview of all the pictures or videos below. On the far left was in Cleveland, Ohio, with a girl that was 16 years old. In the middle is a girl from the UK who now plays university tennis. And we were in Budapest at the time. And it's the same girl on the right in the picture. And that's just a picture that I have that she sent me. And you'll notice that both of these, all these images, the videos or photos below, they're all focused on movement. The legs working, focusing on being in position, really working with the legs, and try to think about being an athlete versus hitting the shots, be an athlete versus hitting the shots. So in the bottom left video, I show, they're ironically, not that it's important, but they're ironically both Olivia, both girls. But I show both girls just working the legs, moving, and the whole emphasis was just to work the legs and be athletic. And there was obviously some structure within the shot making, but the emphasis was on the athleticism and moving the legs and just trying to be in the best position possible. Now, interestingly enough, in the bottom left video, quickly, it doesn't have to be played, but Olivia was playing with I would say he was a 35-year-old, fairly strong male hitter. And so the court speed was pretty quick. So she was really forced to use her legs and be an athlete versus having time and hitting with a lighter ball and being able to be in a perfect position. So she really had to work the legs, and I really like that. And then with Olivia in the middle, Olivia from the UK, the interesting part of that particular day is we were actually at the National Federation courts in Budapest, and the wind was horrible. It was like the one day we decided to go there because we had this practice set up, and the wind was really tough. So the first thing I said to her is, listen, it's not going to be perfect tennis, not close, but we're not supposed to be here for perfect tennis. So let's really focus on being the great athlete you are with the strong legs you've got. And let's try to work on just working the legs and being in the best position with the circumstance we have, because that'll pay off when the conditions are better. Now, interestingly, both girls are the same. Top is in Cleveland, bottom is also in Budapest, but inside. And somebody also, interestingly, side note, but very quickly, the person who's also in the bottom screen is also one of the speakers in this conference, a good friend of mine, Thomas Modio from Budapest. And Tom's a good friend of mine. So he was actually delivering the balls while I was behind Olivia. But in these two shots, we talk about intensity and court sense, because what we were working on both sides, upper and lower, is just those two things. That was the focus. Be intense, understand where you are on the court, and try to manage the situation, the particular rally you're given. So with Olivia on the bottom, she was just working side to side, pushing the legs, being intense. And with Olivia on the top, it was the same idea. The difference was that one was on hard court indoors, one was on regular clay indoors, but just both I was paying attention to, and we were focusing on intensity and court sense, understanding where she is, working the court. And the difference in the two, from a structural point of view, was that Tom was feeding her the balls, and up of course on the top, it was live ball hitting. So moving on to this slide, you can see I'm focused on technique and the hand talent. In both slides is Bianca Andreescu, who most people know, who's had incredible success in the last 2 years. And I've had the pleasure of knowing her and her family for the last 4 or 5 years since she won her second Orange Bowl. And so I put her in here because if you look at her technique is solid, it's smooth, it's clean, it's easy. But if you look at her hand talent, it doesn't matter the ball she's getting. She's able to adapt to every ball that she's receiving, and the quality of the contact that she's making per the ball she's given is, for me, phenomenal. And it's honestly, it's one of the many reasons why she's done what she's done in the game, and she's won all the tournaments in the US Open, and she's top 10 in the world. She has a remarkable ability, and I saw it when I first saw her in the Orange Bowl, the first time I ever saw her before we met. She has a remarkable ability to ball strike with her technique, and she has a remarkable ability to just adjust with the hands to every ball. And you can see it when she plays, you can see it when she practices. So that's why I shared these two videos. And here's an interesting video. I referenced court management, and this is again Bianca. I referenced court management. This is a long time ago, but the drill that she's doing, I love it because it's a simple drill, and any coach anywhere at any time can do the same drill with their students, no question about it. And it's really just about tossing the ball to different locations in the court and having the player be the best prepared and manage the court space. One of the things I often notice is that you look at a drill, and you look at a coach working with a player, and you look at the player, and they get a ball tossed to them back in the court. And when they hit it, it's almost like they don't realize they should move up and recover to the baseline, or that the ball may come short. So I really believe that a simple exercise like this and taking value in assessing court management is very important. Tennis IQ. So I put this here, and again, there's a reference, a picture of Bianca, and it's a very simple picture. Obviously, the ball is a little bit shorter. She's up in the court, and she's about to look like, attack a backhand. And the reason why I put tennis IQ here in this picture is actually quite simple, because when I look at players and I assess them at any level, I just watch something simple, like the ball's short, and they have to move up, and they have to bend. And do they realize, do they have the understanding or the awareness, the tennis IQ, to realize that, hey, I'm inside the court, I'm technically in a position to attack, but the ball may not be the right one. So they position themselves to be aggressive physically, but they also position the ball in a way where they can try to control the court based on the ball they're given. So that's why I put tennis IQ, because not every ball has the green light. So that's why I emphasized with this particular picture. And again, the same thought with the tennis IQ and court sense. With this particular video, it's a very simple practice where Bianca is recognizing the ball that's floating, a very floaty ball, a ball to move up and attack, and she's understanding the court sense, meaning she's aware where she needs to be in the court, and she's attacking with the swing volley. So for any players that you assess, when you see a ball floating, or you see a different ball, variation of the ball versus your standard rally shot, see what the player is doing. Do they move up? Do they recognize? Do they have the court sense and the tennis IQ to adapt and adjust and play a shot that you feel appropriate? And this particular picture, I reference adversity management and stress management. This is US Open Final 2019. I was there watching Bianca play Serena. And the reason why I referenced this particular picture is because at 5-1 in the second set, I've never heard a stadium in my life so loud, and I've been in many where it's quite full. And the noise for Serena, the cheering, was unbelievably loud that it was impossible to hear anything. And so the reason why I put here adversity management and stress management is because at that moment in time, in that match, in that situation, Bianca was playing herself, and she was playing 25,000 people. That's what she was basically doing. And quite honestly, had she not managed to get past the second set, it would have been very complicated, considering she started 6-3, 5-1 up. So it was very important that she managed the moment, the stress and the adversity, and got over the hump. So that's why I referenced the importance of these two things. So when I assess players, that bad moment, that really bad moment, that they can manage the moment and deal with the adversity and stress, because that's going to be the difference in them having success. So as you can see, I hope I've done a good job working you through or walking you through my presentation, creating clarity in terms of how I assess players, why I call it will to skill, because I referenced over and over many things about the mind down to the legs. And if you notice, I hope that you take away from this, that for me, when I assess players, and it works for me, that the last thing that I pay attention to is technique, because I think that many of the other aspects and the characteristics are far more impactful on future development and success. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share it with you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. Let me ask you some one more question, because your presentation was very interesting in many ways. How much in terms of information you share with parents, and how you manage that?
Sure, that's a great question. So typically how I work, and we're obviously in a new world right now where nobody's going anywhere doing anything, so it's a little bit different. But in today's world, what I do is I usually, with the parents, I give them a 10-minute or 15-minute, I offer them a free consult. So I basically allow them to get on Zoom with me, talk like you and I are talking, 15, 20 minutes. It's usually longer because I'm not a stickler for time, because I want to, share with them and see what their needs are. And I just ask them questions. What is their son or daughter's goal? Why are they playing? What do they really want? Do they really, have a big goal? Or what are they doing now that they feel could be better for their son or daughter? And once I do that, the next step, if they're interested in working, is I ask them to send me videos that are 5 to 7 minutes in length that cover all the shots, all the aspects, and maybe also some competition, but it doesn't have to be tournament competition. And then what I do is I promise them that I will deliver a detailed assessment via email within 48 hours. And then I offer them the opportunity to then get on a Zoom call like this, like you and I are having, or I would have. And I go through the entire assessment point by point with them, and I answer any questions that they have.
Very good statement about it. In the name, Sandy, of the World Tennis Conference by GPTCA and Sigal Institute, we want to say thank you for your presentation. I am sure that all the coaches from more than 17 countries which are on World Tennis Conference will enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Well, Fernando, many thanks for all the time you've spent with me, for inviting me to be a part of it, because listen, I see all the people that are involved, all the great coaches and the great minds of the sport. And for me, honestly, it's an honor to be even amongst everybody and have the opportunity to share something that I feel very passionate about. And I feel like is a very interesting topic. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. Passion is very important. And also to mention, let's say about Tennis One, which is our partner, not only in the conference, is partner also in many future conferences with the Segal Institute, and we work together for a better tennis. Thank you very much, Sandy. We keep working on that.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Appreciate the time.